Hey guys, it's Rafi, and we're playing a game here today on Chess 10 plus 5. And the game started with the Carol Khan, and I believe this is one of those lines of the Carol where white is trying to play for a quick and even position. Um, White usually doesn't have any problems if I just take, and then trade queens here. So I'm going to actually play bishop g4 here. Just thinking about how I want to develop my pieces and forces here. Knight f6 will kind of run into this e5 idea pretty quickly. So that's not going to be the most ideal way to play. I'm thinking about exchanging on f3 and following up with e5 though. Just really taking over the center. I think that's what I'm going to go for here. This seems to be the most principled way of approaching this kind of setup is, just saying to white that I will just take over the center, get rid of this knight that was controlling the center, and have two strong pawns, and this white bishop doesn't look the greatest, whereas my bishop has good range. I believe if he allows it, we'll even play d4 here. No, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe d4 is a little too early here. Not yet. Knight f6, he takes, I take, rook e1. Might run into some pressure on the e5 pawn, though. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I'm a little worried about is, will he be able to pressure this e5 point a lot here? Thing with pushing d4 is that it kind of takes away a lot of these diagonals that my bishop could use, my queen could use. And so it also allows for a quick knight d2 and knight c4, pressuring the e4 pawn again. So I'm not really a huge fan of those positions personally. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of this e4, e5 pawn coming under pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and push. I've had a game like this, something like this before, and in that game, my opponent was able to really activate this bishop very well on this diagonal. Somehow this pawn ended up moving. Maybe she played f4 or something along those lines, and so it was yeah, it wasn't a fun position to have to play, but I think here, I think it's a little different from my other game that I'm referencing here. So my opponent's idea is to play bishop g2 followed by quick f4. Bishop d6, bishop g2, knight e7, f4, castles, f5 could come on the board, so that's something to consider. Knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, f4. I don't know. I feel like maybe I can slow down f4 for a little bit, perhaps with queen c7. And if he ever plays f4, I'll just take the pawn on f4. That could be one idea. So he doesn't go for this idea right away, so that's good for us. He wants to come up here and bother our bishop immediately, which I'm okay with. Although I will not give him the bishop pair, though. I will put the bishop back on c7. Should he attack this bishop? I'll castle, and after f4 comes on the board, I might even follow up with f5. I definitely will not let him have this bishop pair for sure. So I'll drop this bishop back to c7. And if he doesn't play f4 now, I will play f5 myself. So he goes ahead and prepares knight c4 with this move. And I think that's totally fine with me. Thing with f5 is I do give him this beautiful e4 square for all of his pieces to penetrate inside of. That's the only major issue here. Open up the bishop and lots of things like that. Let's wait on that a little bit. Let's go ahead and get our pieces out first. One of my ideas is to play rook c8 followed by bishop b8 as well. I'm very hesitant to give him this e4 square by playing this f5. But at the same time, I cannot really allow f4 and f5 to happen either. That will really be a problematic scenario. And f6 really looks like I'm just asking for a kingside attack here with all of his pieces pointing this way. So I guess if he plays f4, I will not have a choice really but to play for f5 really. I guess I could have considered knight g6 last move. That would have held up f5, f4 for one more move, but I think after knight f4, he's getting in f4 anyway. Or after knight c4, he's getting in f4 anyway. Don't want to give him the bishop pair. Although my queen is really looking awkward now. And he gets that move in anyway. But I think I'm here ready to sort of like open up the position now. Now that his knight can't go to e4 as easily because he committed himself to this c4 square. Now might be a good time to go ahead and bump up with f5. And if he ever pushes, then he'll give us this d5 square for our knights. Maybe I'll consider putting one knight here and then swinging both knights to the d4 square. And if he takes, same idea. I still get this square. I'm thinking his long-term strategy might be to play something like rook b1 followed by b4 and b5. Help with the bishop. With the help with the bishop of the bishop, this diagonal will become vulnerable for me probably in the future. So I do need to keep that in mind. I definitely want to get rid of this knight on c4 with something like that. If the knight ever comes to e5, I might just take it. And pushing this pawn really isn't that much of a worry for me, I don't think. Like I said, now I'm going to switch my knights over to these to occupy these light squares here immediately. My plan is to occupy this d5. If he takes on b6, I think I'll probably take with the a pawn. Starting some pressure on the a file as well with my open a file. If he goes back, now he doesn't have this e4 square anymore. Whereas I have d4. Or d5, I mean. This would be an interesting move right now, though. To hit b7. After which I guess I could follow up with rook a8. So since he takes... I think instinctively speaking, I like that idea of taking this way. Capturing towards the center. And then planting my knight on d5. And then eventually maybe rerouting this bishop to a different diagonal, perhaps on this diagonal. Could be one idea. I think I want to go ahead and get my knight to this square and anticipate some sort of a c3 break soon. It might be a good idea also to push the king over to this h8 just to keep it off this diagonal. If this were to ever become open with queen b3 check, that diagonal could become a little vulnerable. And so, you know, some sort of check might come with a tempo or something like that. I believe that's a two-purpose move. He wants to swing the rook over to the h file and also keep my knight out of e3. For now, I think I will start with the queen, connecting my rooks. I might swing one of the rooks over to this and here and to here, possibly. I don't know. I don't really want to allow this either at the same time. Maybe I'll choose this rook. Some maneuver like that. Spawn is definitely going to be an issue. Okay, so he wants to get the queen in here as well. I would not like to have his queen come into this square, so let's go ahead and swing the queen over here. But we do need to worry about this pawn moving at any point, though. So definitely would be a good idea to have some sort of a blockade. I'm thinking now that maybe the knight should have been on here, but not sure if that would be the ideal placement for the knight, to be completely honest. There's always c3 and c4 ideas in the picture, of course, we need to keep in mind. I didn't want to play a move like g6 because I think it just kind of creates a lot of weaknesses around my king, which I didn't want to commit to this early in the game. So my idea might be now to play this. Okay, so perhaps I'll play this, but then I'm always worried about him capturing here and really giving me two sets of double pawns. And these will be weak, very weak. So that's something to consider all the time in these positions. Trying to think of how to better place this bishop, though. That's probably one of my worst placed pieces right now. I'm afraid to move this rook off of this pawn because he can just push it. Although after pushing, I take, he takes, I take, he takes. Not the end of the world. If I want to take over the a file, I can swing my rook back to the a file again. He'll have to play queen a1. Definitely interesting positions can arise out of that. So now he plans to play this, I believe, which I'll respond with g6, I think, now. Knight is well placed also in the square because bishop is kind of tied down to protecting f4 all the time. I think I want to go ahead and start some adventures on this side of the board with here and here. So he's attacking d4 now. I don't want to commit to a move like c5, so I'm going to actually move this knight. G6 might be a move that I could consider playing at some point. But again, highly committal move. That's the only thing I worry about with these committal moves is that. So he wants to get the other rook involved as well. He'll play rook g1 now. So my idea here was that I'll now swing this rook over and start hitting this pawn. He'll have to play b3, and that gives another additional squares for my knight. So I believe I can't allow this pawn to move forward now. So that needs to be played. I'm not sure if my move was the most accurate or not. Not totally certain. So he goes, oh, okay, I see. See what's going on here. So yeah, he's given me some problems now with these doubled pawns for sure. For sure. Definitely have to watch for this square on, h7. But I feel like I've got the position somewhat under control here. I just have to make sure that I keep this point very, very well defended now. Oh, did I just drop a pawn? Oh yeah, I think I did. Dang, that's awful. Well, that's unfortunate. Let's come back. Not trade bishops or anything yet. and try to pressure this pawn. Let's get another pawn on this dark square to block out the bishop, and also to try and maintain a pin over here on the king or something like that. We're just going to maintain the blockades on the light squares, basically, at this point. I guess I should have considered this queen f3. It would have been interesting. But I don't know if my queen can actually maneuver inside of here, though. Creating a threat on h4. If he misses, I'll just take it. Creating a threat again. But giving up d4, though. Getting a couple extra pawns out of all this now, so hopefully we'll get some good play out of all this. What's a good way to get the queen out now is the question. Yeah, this is going to be very, very annoying, these passed pawns now. And unfortunately, I don't have any good way to stop these central two passed pawns. Just going to be rolling down the board viciously. Oof, that's awful. Just totally missed that. I have no idea if this is actually working or not, but let's just see what happens. I have an idea of playing check here if he takes here. I think he can take with this rook, though, which really ruins the plan. Yeah. Man. Again, no idea if this is all working, just trying stuff. And that should be good. Should win the game for us now. And that should be it. And I get the bishop too. I can just sack here and just take this. Yep. Ooh, that was a tough one. Yeah, definitely well played by my opponent. I think definitely I had some mistakes here, but I think it was a good, we did a good job of keeping our nerves steady in those last few seconds, even when I believe I was actually losing once I missed rook h6 check, or rook h5 check. After I missed rook takes h5 check, I knew that I was definitely worse, or maybe even losing. But I think we did a good job of maintaining composure and creating as many threats as possible in that position, in that very tactical, complicated position. And that's probably what saved the game for us here. So let's see. So the recommendation is to just trade everything down. Although I just don't think that there's anything that, I guess black is okay in these positions. Black, has obviously equalized, and the thing is that lower rated players will often use this idea as white to try to go for a very quick endgame and to try to draw the game. And so that's why I was thinking about not trading these queens off so early and going into the endgame right away, which is why I played the bishop g4 line. But in hindsight, I think this is, I kind of prefer this. I don't think the opening turned out too good for me personally. I feel like there were just too many points in the opening where I just didn't feel comfortable, and I think that my development was very awkward in some ways. So yeah. Anyway, so that was the rationale behind bishop g4, which is obviously not a mistake, but I do think that taking the pawn was probably the most principled approach to this. After all, black is trying to equalize out of the opening. He's not trying to play for an advantage. So here I went for something interesting, I think. And I think it was not the right idea. I'm not sure. So here I took the knight. And then I played for e5 to get the center. Which, yeah, that's kind of where I probably went wrong in this. I feel like I've had a very similar game one time. I guess it's not in the database, but I feel like I've seen this position before in my previous games. And anyway, so it's not on Lee chess here, but maybe it was a slightly different position, but similar idea. Similar idea took place. So he castles, and I went for d4 here to trying to lock down this bishop. But I think the two bishops advantage that he will have here will have some significance, I think. So he tries this idea of playing g3 with playing a quick f4. Interesting idea for sure. I was thinking that he would go for this knight d2 and knight c4 immediately. So I continue developing and getting, trying to slow down this f4 as for as long as I possibly can. Computer's recommendation is to play knight f6. I went with knight e7 because I thought maybe I could quickly play f5 myself. But maybe it wasn't the most accurate square for my knight. I don't know. So here he plays a4. I thought he would play for f4 right away, but plays a4 to try to secure this c4 square for his knight. And yeah, I think that it's not a bad idea, but it's not the most straightforward approach given the last few moves he made. He kind of switches plans a little bit here. So knight d7, and then he plays knight c4. Like I said earlier, I didn't want to give up both of my bishops and leave him with the bishop pair with nothing to challenge them. So I saved the bishop, of course. f4 came on the board. I traded and played f5. So he doesn't totally roll me on the king side with these moves, which would be devastating if I allowed that. And again, I feel like white has a very easy to play position here, whereas black is kind of very awkward in his development. So he pushes and tries to open up the diagonal for his bishop, but in doing so, he also does give me the d5 square for my pieces, and which I immediately occupy. Knight b6, and here I thought that during the game I thought about him playing knight a5, which is looks like the computer's suggestion as well, hitting the b7 pawn and making me play rook b8, which is not really a move I want to play. It's really maintaining a constant tension and attack on this diagonal. After this, I'm not even sure if rook b8 is working. He might have some sacrifice. I guess he doesn't have any sacrifice ideas. So Stockfish is suggesting 97. I guess after taking here, wasn't totally sure what's going on here. So this. Oh, he can't really move his knight away now. That's the problem. I see. Takes and takes. This. Okay, interesting line to consider. Didn't quite go that way. He chose to, I think, take, and I took with the a pawn. Computer can't really make up its mind about which way to capture, but I think taking of the a pawn was probably the right way to approach it, which it's starting to agree now. Oh wow, g5 here. That's definitely a move I wouldn't consider too quickly. Kind of seems weakening. But maybe the idea is that I can always play my king to h8, put my rook on g8, and then his king is the one that's open. So I chose to play instead knight d5. Rook f1, or I'm sorry, rook f3 from white. Queen d7 is what I played. Rook h3, and I thought about g3, at g6 here, but I didn't want to commit the kingside pawns too early, so I played queen f7 first. Rook g3, rook e8, queen d7 was suggestion. Bishop f3, just a bunch of maneuvering at this point in the game. King h8, just getting the king off of that pin. Gets his king off the pin. Get my other rook into the game here to defend the knight. So now he starts attacking my d-pawn, which I defend this way. But his attack just continues here, I think. So now I finally commit to g6. Oh, no, I didn't. I played knight here first. I think now I committed to g6. Oh, no, I still didn't. I played rook g8 first. I'm very hesitant to move my pawns in front of my king. As you can see, as a principled approach, I just try to, unless I'm very sure that the structure is going to be helpful for me and not cause any weaknesses, I try to keep from moving pawns in front of my king whenever possible. Queen blocks. And he did a pretty good job of here of just constantly he kept on attacking different points in my position, which I had quite a few weaknesses for him to work with. D4 pawn, the diagonal, H1 to A8 diagonal, the F5 pawn were all points of weakness. Maybe even the knight on D5 felt a little awkward because of the possibility of bishop taking there and messing up my pawn structure. So I try to poke at some weaknesses, which is the A4 pawn, which is not really a weakness, but it was an undefended pawn at the moment. So B3, he defends. I bring my rook back. I think I should have brought my rook back to D8, though. Computer likes bishop D8, which I very briefly considered, I think. So yeah, that was definitely a mistake because it allows this combination right now. And now I can't take back with the queen because I'll lose the F5 pawn at the end of the line. So I had to take this way, and yeah, now I have two sets of weak pawns, B file and D file. But again, I think I showed a lot of patience here and just kind of holding and maintaining this worst position and defending against any sort of incoming threats. Eventually, I did crack because he took on H5 with the rook, but for a while, I think I was sitting tight pretty well. Just wanted to blockade all the squares for any kind of pawn pushes that might happen in the future, especially under such time pressure, 10-second versus a minute. Not a lot of time. So again, just tried to create some sort of complications and stuff and getting rid of one of my weaknesses. That's why I played B5. I took. Now he starts driving that pawn to break up things, so I really had to stop that from happening. So yeah, here I really messed up by dropping that pawn. And I brought the bishop back, and here apparently he could have gone for rook takes g6 due to the discovered check coming from the bishop. So takes, and if I take, so let's just say I take this way, he takes, I take, he'll have this sub-end, and I'll lose my queen. So that's a tactic I definitely missed. But with such little time, it was difficult to see all of these tactics. So yeah, definitely would have lost on the spot had he found this. So I think here, again, I should have played king h7 just to get the king off of this pin. I didn't even think too much about this pin because I thought this was so well defended, but Yeah, definitely should have gone for a defensive sort of move here. But anyway, computer actually likes queen d8 also. Aggressive way to defend. So now I move my king up to give g6 a little bit of support, get off that diagonal. So finally, I decide that it's time to block that diagonal of that bishop, which was a great decision, I think. So up until here, looks like white has some advantage, but here his start advantage starts to dwindle a little bit according to the computer, and I agree. Bishop becomes a little bit passive, and I get this nice long diagonal for my queen, which I very nicely used. I very briefly thought about queen f3 there, but I think my queen would have gotten kicked out of there very quickly. Yeah, after rook f2, queen has to come back basically. So I chose to just blockade this pawn again, which I thought at any point he could have some tactics with moving that, sacrificing that pawn and infiltrating into my position. I just wanted to always keep an eye on this pawn. So I always kept this pawn blockaded the whole game. So now I come back to attack h4, but I do drop the d4 pawn here in the process, which was a pretty big mistake because he could have taken with the queen, actually. So if he takes with the queen, I don't think I can take on h4. Like this, I don't think works. If I come back, I think he'll have this same idea of just these two central pass pawns are just way too strong, and I can't really maintain this in game very well. But this is kind of what happened in the game, actually. Very similar to this idea, except we kept queens on the board, which is basically what allowed me a lot of these counter chances which I got in the game, which I capitalized off of. Bishop e7 here. Bringing the bishop back away from the attack and continuing some more operations. Just shuffling pieces at this point here. Gave it check. Here I thought I felt pretty good. I thought that, got another pawn out of this, so I felt pretty comfortable here. But yeah, it was very difficult to penetrate into his position because he had his pieces so well placed here. And so here he just pushes this pass pawn, bring my rook back. And I was so surprised. Why didn't he push d5? Seems like the most natural move, clearing up the diagonal and just driving home these two passed pawns. I have no idea why he didn't push it. He played this instead, which I thought maybe next move he'll play d5, surely. And he still doesn't play it. He plays this. I thought, again, it's attacking move, so surely next d5 will be coming. But this is where I mess up, though. I played this, which allows this check, which I totally missed. And now I went for my only counter-attacking chances. This is where all the tactics training comes off, being able to see this tactical idea of the check on the H file instantly. So here I played this combination perfectly. Even though I had seconds on the clock, I was able to calculate not everything, but the gist of the tactics quickly enough to where I played the right moves. So here, took with this one. He should have taken with the queen, really, after which I would have played rook h3 check, I think. Oh, I would have even had rook takes c1 check, interestingly. I didn't even think about that idea. So here he's actually worse as soon as he played this move. He's losing no matter which way he captures now. So now here. Can't take the rook because he loses his queen. And again, I just saw a simple way to win the position, so I didn't really think about all the other checks and things like that with 12 seconds on my clock. I just traded, took this, and I knew that I could win this position very easily. I'm up an entire rook. Just grab the bishop. Got rid of that. And just for simplicity, just to simplify the position, just got rid of the passed pawns. And easy win. Yep. Pretty good game, I think, overall. I think I'm pretty happy with how I played this one out. Not very happy with the opening, how it turned out, but then game went pretty well. And I mean, the middle game was very, very solid. So, yeah, leave in the comments what you guys think, and I'll catch you in my next video.